for artists, so in Cuba, they act like they're supporting the arts, and everywhere there are artists and all of this, but all the art is judged on whether they can be one of those artists. So you're not free to express, as long as you express what the government approves. That's why I'm against any government funding for the arts. It's the anti-art. I mean, it completely takes your freedom away. Because if you have a government committee that's deciding whether your art is worthy of their money, what fools we are. It's living in a materialistic level. It's valuing everything by money. That's what socialism is. Then there's nothing to strive for. And there's no place to strive for it. So that's my argument. And I never argue with Nils because he's so precious, and I don't want to have a family that, sits at the dinner table and argues. So when he gets an audience, he will start on his little spiel. And that's the picture that's presented in this dream existence that has nothing to do with our true identity, our true worth, our true value, our indisputable value. And you can't have a fear of that. Or I feel that I don't want to live my life based on a political downer. And because then you always feel so slighted and so harmed, and you can never get past that. And I don't want to live that way. You can't slap a word on it. Socialism, communism, anarchy. You can't do. None of them will work. Because they're human. They're based on insincere human,
But maybe it's not about putting blame on anyone, but it's more about finding ways to lift the people who are suffering from these systems up. It's like looking
right,
at it
and the way
up.
that they are lifted up is through their own bootstraps. You cannot depend on other people to lift you up. You really can't. When all is said and done, that's our strength. That's what builds our strength, is realizing we're responsible for our own welfare. And we have to place our welfare in the right place. We can't put it on an unstable, greed-based human society. And that's just the fact. That is the overriding, prevailing path to bliss, is that we can take our lives, to God and see that every day is this huge possibility and nothing is in our way. And the people who have broken through, and people have broken through, right? All the way through history, we have incredible, remarkable examples of people who have overridden race, creed, religion, and any barriers, money, all the human barriers. They've broken through all of those things and given great gifts to mankind. And they're not usually out marching in the streets. They're usually just doing their own, demonstrating it for themselves in their own way. And it's something that inspires and breaks all the false laws down. Nobody's held down. Nobody can be held down. It's impossible. We're loved, and we have infinite resources. Infinite resources. There's nothing in the way but our own thought. And the more we find ourselves tucked into a victim situation. See, the thing about the liberal, quote unquote, I hate to call people liberals who, to me, are not liberal. I don't like labeling people as liberal when they're not. They're basically the most scared, and uptight, that people can be, that move in the title of liberalism. But politically, I guess it's taken that word. But I feel more liberated than people who call themselves liberals. But where was I going with that? That's just words. The big selling point that they make or the way that they get people is they get them to follow them. Okay, let's talk about in politics. It's saying, oh, these people are victims of this. These people are victims of that. These people, and then the people gather into these victim categories, and then they're needy. You see, then they're needy. Maybe they didn't even see themselves as a victim before, but if I'm a certain color or a certain sex or a certain demographic financially or a certain occupation or whatever, I'm a victim. And then all of a sudden, you're helpless. And you've titled yourself that way because you've fallen for the promulgation of that theory that, then the victims are needy. And so then they can follow. And there's the individuality, the inspiration, the childlike joy, the possibilities are just flattened. And that's where the world is right now. And it's epidemic. It's a big title. It's a big thing. Everyone's finding where they're a victim. And it stops all progress. It stops all joy. Yeah, wait on. I actually don't need this right now. This is good. Maybe I'll have some. Anyway, Bella, are you catching on to what I'm saying?
Yeah, I understand what you're saying.
Do you agree or do you disagree? And you can't play it both ways. You can't believe in God and believe in mortal, because the mortal is the belief that there's good and bad, and it's not evenly distributed. That's the whole gimmick. And the people that overcome that are people, they may not even know the word God. I'm not even saying that there's some religion or anything. It's just a sense of infinite possibility. And they overcome it. And they have to work harder, maybe, than the person who looks like they were born with a silver spoon in their mouth. And those who thrive and give and have a rich life, none of them have an easy life. I can't think of a person who has changed the world who's had an easy life, because they're not into it. That's not their goal. Their goal is to give. So if all our talk is constantly about these material situations, we will be talking about this till doomsday.
Mm. Yeah.
Because you were believing a system that has no power but what we give it. The possibilities are within ourselves. And I'm not talking about me as a God, but me as recognizing God. And so, and I'm not talking about me, I'm talking about people who really have demonstrated, beautiful changes of thought. And there aren't many, and there never will be many. And it won't be everybody. The only way everybody's going to get anything is by individually, not everybody, but individually working past the everybody belief. These conversations, Bella, have been going on since, well, at least I can only talk about my own experience. They've been going on my whole lifetime. Mm-hmm. That's all. These conversations, Bella, have been going on since well, at least I can only talk about my own experience. They've been going on my whole lifetime.
Mm-hmm.
That's all they talk about. And then they put themselves up on a pedestal because they know that somebody's being taken advantage of. And it's a way for them to feel good. Do you know what I mean? They know this. And the little men don't know this. And they can't possibly know it because they're stupid and poor.
Right.
You see, and I do not see that. I don't see it. It's not about how many hours you put into school. Nothing to do with that. It's just innate. It's our God-given intelligence, wisdom, and being. So how can, but you can't have a conversation like this at the dinner table. It has to be only the downer side. I'll tell you why. Because Heather and Nils' arguments are based on facts, and I don't want to dispute or discuss facts because they're not. To me, they're not. They're not the direction to answer the question. So that's the reason. That's the real reason. There are people I know that could talk them under the table. But it's because of a certain kind of human knowledge that they could relate to. At this point, they're not going to relate to their mother-in-law, who's, in their view, is, a victim. But I know that Heather isn't, but Heather does have a very deep base. But, I can't really be inside her. I don't know. She's an individual, she's been with Nils, married to Nils for many, many years. And so and Nils, they love each other. And I wouldn't want to pit them against each other or see them as, I've got to get you guys. Okay. I wouldn't want to. I guess it's a little different in families because you don't see each other, or at least our family, we're not together all the time. And I just want, I just got kids and I already have, I need one more for you. I think one-on-one, if I was alone with Nils, in fact, I have been alone with Nils and I have had wonderful conversations with him. Do you want, Richard, you want jam? The jam, I took it out because you have to reach it up there. I took it out when we were trying to make room in the icebox for Thanksgiving. How can I explain? Oh, if I were one-on-one, but when we're only together for dinner time, I guess it's the old, maybe an old way of thinking that you don't want to talk about you don't want to create more controversy at the dinner table, necessarily. I'm not really holding back because Bella, okay, here's another thing that I've noticed about people bigger than I. They don't need to pick a fight. They know what's true in themselves. So they don't want to make the other person have to shut down because you just want to appreciate and hope for seeing some light coming through. Did I see any light coming through Nils last night? No, I didn't last night. But sometimes he, brings himself around. When Nils is making a speech, it would be pulling him down in front of strangers. And I think that that's cruel. He's talking against me. You didn't hear it. He was saying, so all of you, who think that America is so great, you see, so it wasn't the right time to, I don't think it was the right time to.
What, you think that was a specific attack on you?
Yes, he's always trying to, if I were of like mind, he might not, the subject may not even come up. because he's trying to convince people that he thinks need to be convinced. Now, in a minute, you'll have gravy.
So have you had arguments with him about Trump?
In the past, oh no. In the past, I'm talking way in our new beginning of our relationship, when we first knew him, I would argue with him.
Before they got married?
No, after they were married, even. And then it just was ugly. It wasn't, and I feel it's been progress, because we can have different points of view. I don't know. We don't all have to be at the same stage and state at the same time. We can just appreciate. See, what I appreciate about Nils is, in spite of himself, in spite of his politic, he is a very generous spirit. He's very hopeful. Every day, he just springs up like a newborn baby. Now, I don't even think he gives himself credit for, or acknowledges that buoyancy. But that's the buoyancy that is true about him. Not the dinner table talk, where he's trying to kind of pit, one idea against another and make a point. See, because everything that I think goes back to God, I don't think it's right to push that on people. You can't debate Christian Science. You just can't. It's not right to put it into that situation, because it's not wisdom to do that. So I think if it was just another political, human, like this is a better human plan or something, then maybe you could just say, okay, fair game. We should all just, duke it out until somebody wins. But you can't win. That's it's so deep. Mary Baker Eddy said in one of her writings, not in Science and Health, but in one of her, she said, you can recognize Christian Science by the fewness and faithfulness of its followers. So it's just never going to be a mass thing. But really, Jesus' followers were very few. And then it wasn't until it looks like there are a lot now, but it's all the church. It's not the Christ. And even his disciples turned against him because they were afraid, And some of them stayed right by his side, but most of them went and hid. And I think that sometimes we think we're so smart, and so we want to save the world with our smartness. And it's just another material law that we've got ourselves involved with, and it's always changing. It doesn't even know what it is. Jewel, did I tell you about when I was about this dyslexia thing? Oh, well, I'm so grateful, but it shows me a lot about what people do to children. When I was a little girl, I had a hard time in school, and they didn't have a name for it. They just thought I was dumb or, whatever. So I was in these little remedial reading classes and remedial math and everything, and they were just these like 5 little Mexican boys and me and one little girl, one other little girl or something. And they were children of pickers, so of course their education was scant anyway, because they were moving from place to place. But they didn't have this word. They hadn't titled it. When you give something a name, all of a sudden it becomes real. Like this is serious, and this is a real thing. But for me, because I didn't know that, I just started to I just, now looking back on it, I don't really remember it as a specific thing, but looking back, I can see that I grew out of it because I thought, oh, my responsibility is to learn how to do math correctly and read correctly. And it was my responsibility. And nowadays, they have a name for it. And so it's like something you own. I have dyslexia. You know, my disease is dyslexia. And they even go to special schools and so forth, and they're all praised for being, you know, special. And I thought, how do you ever overcome something that you've been given as special? And for me, because it was my responsibility to learn, I just had to figure out how. So it was basically a game that I figured out. And I'm not subject to it. I've come beyond it, and I've become supposedly smart and and able to do and learn and remember and figure things out and so forth. But it's just that's an example of when we start to say, oh, the poor so-and-sos or such and suches, or they need our help, and this and that. And it's really so wonderful when somehow a person is left alone to work out their own salvation, their own way, because they do become stronger and they do become wiser, and everybody does. And it's just really hard to put it into these terms where when we try to regiment everything and name everything and then put people into these situations where they can't give it up. You know, it just becomes their burden. So the more we do like that, standardizing everything to whose standard, for one thing, and who are these authorities we keep talking about that know better than we do? And I mean we, all of us. I don't care whether we were born in the gutter or born, you know, in a palace. There are always going to be something that is going to want to try to say we have a disadvantage. And the only way to overcome that is individually. And we will, and we do. And it's so exciting when we do. And it's ours then. You know, we've really earned our freedom. So that's the... In your paper today?
Yeah.
When do you think you'll do that?
We work more 2 hours or 3 hours.
Okay, because I was thinking that it might be great for you and Bella and I to meet about ideas and thoughts on the YouTube channel concepts.
Yeah, we can do that.
Okay, so should we make a time? It's roughly, say 3 hours from now,